Good morning and welcome to the August 27 meeting of the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board. Amanda, does it appear to you that we have a quorum? We have a quorum, so we will call the meeting to order. You have been furnished with copies of the minutes of the July 23 meeting. Are there additions or corrections? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. We're going to have a slight revision in the agenda. If you'll turn to your agenda, we're going to proceed with item 11 on the agenda, which we have our friend Mary Margaret with us today to make a presentation about the park. David, do you want to introduce this subject for us?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you said, item 11, moving it up, is recommend resolution combining MAPS 3 Downtown Park, Upper Park Phase 1 and 2 under project M3-P006 and approval of the preliminary report for MAPS 3 Downtown Public Park, Upper Park, project M3-P006. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that we want to combine Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 is behind a little bit because of the challenges we've had with things going on there around the site, and we feel like it's also be more economical for us to combine those phases. So that's why you have the corrected item that we put out in the agenda, and then also your memo that staff just passed out. But all that being said, we're glad that we have the preliminary report here for you guys to see. We have Mary Margaret Jones here from Hargraves and Associates to give you a quick presentation on what's in that preliminary report.
Welcome, Mary Margaret.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here at this, what is really a significant milestone, because with hopefully your approval of this preliminary design report, we'll be able to move into plans and specs, final plans and specs. And not only that, we'll be able to order trees, because you'll see in the presentation we're looking to buy upwards above more than 800 trees for this project. And if we can pre-purchase those, we will get bigger, healthier trees of the types we want and beat our competition to the sources. With that, I'll launch in. Do I have an advancer? I don't think I do. Maybe I do. Now I do. Okay, so I'll do an overview because we're at this milestone point. Some of this is redundant. You guys have seen this before, but it's important, I think, to summarize where we are at this point. So we'll do an overview, and we'll talk about budget and next steps, schedule and next steps. So in terms of overview, this is a good, handy pie chart that really talks about how we are deploying this piece of land and how much of it is soft, how much of it is paved, how much of it is water. Also, the kinds of visitation numbers we anticipate. And the bar chart across the bottom is also what we always use as our benchmark in terms of the public process we went through and the responses we got during that public process for the kinds of things people wanted to see in the park, to which we are still responding and always checking ourselves against. So this is the final design, the preliminary design, sorry. This is the preliminary design. And of course, the major feature is the oval, which can host small and very large events. The promenade that will connect from the corner of Robinson and the Boulevard to Skydance Bridge. Union Station, which of course is not part of this project, but we are studying it conceptually as part of this project, and hopefully it will be folded in to this project. The lake, obviously, which is for recreational purposes, as well as being something very beautiful, and very much about the history of parks in Oklahoma City. Water was always an attractive part of the many historic parks in Oklahoma City. Children's play, places for weddings, gardens, places to eat, and all the services that will support those things. And then a lot of shade, a lot of trees. So if you were looking with the boulevard on your right, the urban gardens on your left, and the Great Lawn, the oval more to your left, you see in the background the cafe, which will be a major hub and destination along the boulevard, outdoor games, things to do around this hub, and here you are sitting underneath the shade structure, which is part of that cafe. So the cafe is as much about outdoor shady spots to eat as it is about indoor places to eat. And in the summer, some cooling water, and in the winter, a warming fireplace outside. And the cafe has a job to do as a beacon at night as well. So this is the view looking across the boulevard as if you were coming across the Harvey Spine. So if you've come across from Myriad Gardens, for instance, you will see the cafe as a very lit and compelling beacon at night. Then looking back the other direction from the hill that is at the end of the oval tips up into this hill, this promontory that gives you a view of the skyline, and you see the stage in the background, and then to the left in the background you see the cafe I was just describing. So shady places on the Great Lawn as well as sunny spaces. It's important to have both open and shady spots. Then as you move down Robinson, this is the civic-scaled interactive fountain for kids of all ages, and the jets progress in size, and I'll show you a little more detail on those. And you see Skydance Bridge in the background. To your right is the lake and the children's play area. And this is as if you were moving down the promenade, approaching Skydance Bridge, Union Station on your right, the lake on your right, the fountain on your left, and these light features that will march all along the promenade and on the other side of Skydance to the river will both refract light in the day and cast light at night. They're designed by the artist Jamie Carpenter. They'll be quite beautiful. So up in the air above I-40, looking across the park toward the skyline, and you see in the foreground the Robinson Gardens and the ramp up to Skydance Bridge, which creates this sort of amphitheater seating next to Robinson Gardens. Then progressing to the civic-scale fountain, the lake, the children's play area, the oval, and the cafe and the stage in the background. And at the lake, you also see on the left the boathouse, and I'll talk about that in a little more detail as well. So now almost in the same spot, but down on the ground, and you'll see something we've added to this spot that we think will make it even more compelling and attractive. The woodland gardens are some people's favorite part of the plan because this is where you will meander on a meandering path through shady woodland that is native to Oklahoma, and you'll come across these various gardens, and each of these gardens will be different, but they will evoke wet or dry or lawn or sun or shade, and they will be places of discovery and interpretation and education and fun. So looking from that promontory, this time toward Union Station, last time you were looking toward downtown, this time you're looking toward Union Station, looking over the lake and looking over some of those woodland gardens along the Woodland Trail. Now, the boathouse was an addition that we came up with after the master plan as a way of really activating the lake. It's the place where you'll rent your boat. It's the place where you'll rent a bike, not necessarily a Spokey, but a bike just for this park. It's a place where you can grab a hot dog or a beer and hang out on an evening and have a view like this. So instead of toward downtown, you're looking across the lake or down the length of the lake, so it will look even bigger than it is, toward Skydance Bridge and toward Union Station. And then Union Station itself, and the idea of turning that vehicular space in front of Union Station into a plaza, a patio, if you will, Sunday in the park. You could imagine having brunch in a restaurant that we hope will occupy Union Station, spilling into this beautiful plaza, looking across the lake. So just to dive a little deeper into some of those features, these are the 800-plus trees that we are proposing and hoping to start contract growing this fall. You can see that the majority, well, half of those are part of the woodland. So that's where we're creating the sort of shady respite. But a good many of them along the promenade, along in the oval, creating shade around the edges of the oval, and then deployed in various places across the park. And we're working with a panel of experts to make sure we pick the right trees and to make sure we plant them correctly. We want them to thrive. And then the same thing for the plants on the ground. A very rich variety of types of planting at ground level, so that you have different experiences in the understory scale walking through the park. And again, working with that panel of experts to make sure we're choosing the right plants. And Myriad Gardens has been very helpful in organizing that panel of experts and being part of that panel. And then the paving, and thinking about the hierarchy of paved spaces and how they give clarity to the way you use the park, move through the park. Obviously, a large emphasis on the Boulevard and Robinson, but then the many trails that weave through the park and around the lake and around the oval as well. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how this park is supported by services. So on a day-to-day basis, you need to make sure you have the right number of bathrooms for day-to-day. Obviously, for big events, porta potties will have to be brought in, but day-to-day, we wanted to make sure there are bathrooms distributed in the right places. So you see bathrooms in the cafe building, you see them in the stage building, you see them in the building that's at the children's playground. Got to have those bathrooms next to the children's playground. You see them in the boathouse, and you see them in Union Station. Then food at the cafe, at the boathouse, and in Union Station. And then, of course, the places where there'll be food carts and food trucks as well. Then on a market day, think of Robinson as being a very flexible use promenade with shade, both by trees and shade structures, and plenty of places for food trucks and food carts and picnic tables. Our function days where there's weddings, we have places for weddings within the park of all sizes, so small intimate weddings, and big tents and small tents can be set up within the park. And then we looked at the events, so whether it's a one-day 1,500-person event on the Great Lawn that doesn't impede the roads at all, or a 15,000-person one-day event on the Great Lawn that does use a little bit of Robinson for setup but doesn't close Robinson, or the 250,000 multi-day event, which here that is mapped as actually the Arts Festival, which would close the Boulevard and half of Robinson. But it works very well for all of these kinds of events, and we've worked with the planners and or representative planners of these kinds of events to make sure we're making a park that works for all of those kinds of scales. These are the buildings within the park, designed by Butzer Architecture and Urbanism. Hans Butzer is very much, and Tori are very much a part of our team. All of them are of a family. They are all scaled appropriately to the park, and they are distributed throughout the park so that you get destinations and you get people moving through the park. That's really important, to keep people moving through the park. Each one is quite different, and each one is quite delightful and fairly modest in size. None of them is very big, because Union Station is where we really want to put our emphasis in terms of historic preservation, restoration, and big events and big uses within Union Station. So these are the elements that I told you about last time that the hopeful, potential, possible operator, Myriad Gardens, brought to the table in terms of additions they wanted to see to the upper park that would be good for revenue generation. Things they have learned in the running of Myriad Gardens are needed. More wedding spots, more shady pavilions under which you could have markets, weddings, or roller skating in the summer, a place for a seasonal carousel, a way to fence off with a low, discreet fence the main part of the children's play area for rental for special events, the outdoor bike rental, etc. Those are the kinds of things that, since I last saw you, we have been working on to incorporate into the plan, working closely with Myriad Gardens. So the garden rooms and the idea of the wedding venues being designed so that they support weddings. They're actually consulting with their the wedding planner in town who does many of the weddings in Myriad. The shade structure on Robinson that really creates a place for the food trucks. So the food trucks pull up, but these shade structures create a place, and it's both trees and trellis creating this shade and lights at night. And then at Robinson Gardens, creating a pavilion that will have dappled shade, light, not dark underneath, but shady and rain protected underneath, where one could have a farmer's market or a large wedding or roller skating. And these are sort of in progress design studies that we're doing now and will further during final plans and specs, and you'll see again. The lake is doing a job for us. It's not just beautiful. It is collecting all the stormwater on the site and reusing that stormwater for irrigation on the site. So the blue rectangle under the Great Lawn is storing water that percolates through the Great Lawn into a gravel subbase that then is fed by pipe to the lake gradually. So we really are using every bit of rainfall on this site in a sustainable way. Crossing that lake should be a beautiful experience, though. So the bridge is one that recalls the sort of industrial heritage of the area with a metal sort of frame, but within that metal frame is the softness of wood and places to sit and light inside that will then filter out through those wood slats and cast light down on the lake below. The fountain is really taking its cue from the beauty of the prairie and the plants of the Oklahoma City landscape, or the Oklahoma landscape. And when on, the arcs that come out of these structures will seemingly be blowing in the wind, having that kind of movement and direction. And there's a larger piece and a smaller piece for small kids, and the smaller piece is directly adjacent to the play area. And when the water is turned off automatically by the sensors that sense high winds, you still have these beautiful stainless steel structures, and you still have a pool of water, a shallow, shallow, shallow pool of water to pad about in. Or that can be turned off, and that becomes a great place to put up a big tent, like the Arts Festival will, for instance, in this location. The playground, we've spent a lot of time on the playground and developing it to be sure that it appeals to children of all ages, from toddlers to seniors and in between, and so that there is a loop. So you start closest to the shelter, make your way further and further afield the older you are, and then make your way back. And there's a variety of things to do, and they're about gardens and landscape and play and discovery. And we built a huge model of this in our office, and these are a couple of pictures of that big model. So the streetscape, this is the boulevard, and this is the two conditions at the boulevard. One is not at the cafe, and one is at the Woodland Gardens, and one is at the cafe. And you can see the nice broad sidewalk on the south side of the boulevard. And then on Robinson, at the corner of Robinson and the boulevard, where we hope there will be a major piece of sculpture, a process we'll embark on as well in final plans and specs. And then further down Robinson, where the food trucks and the shade pavilion will be. And then furthest south on Robinson, where we will connect the Robinson Gardens, where that pavilion will be, to the underpass that goes under Robinson and connects to the development block to the east. So here's our budget, and here's our costs in terms of our current cost estimates. So we're just under budget, so we are pleased about that. Not much more to say about that. And phasing, as I mentioned, we hope to begin the process of reserving our trees as soon as we can. And then there will be two construction packages, one immediately following the next, no pause in between. But we'll start with a package that will do earthwork and utilities, the lake and the bridge, and then we will have a construction package that builds the rest of the park, including the buildings. So it'll be two rolling packages, that's what we call it, that one rolls right into the next for construction. Here's where we are in the overall schedule. Hopefully starting plans and specs with your approval and hopefully City Council's approval next week. Then we can begin advanced tree supply and the sort of underground construction and then the above ground construction. So there's a color coding now to our reports. The top one, the orange one, is our master plan, which was approved by you and City Council. Then we are now presenting to you the orange report, which is the upper park, and we will be back to you for approval of a preliminary report in December, we hope, for the lower park, which will be the green report. So each of these are components of the process we go through for this whole great urban park. And that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I want you all to be thinking about what questions you might want to ask Mary Margaret while she's here, but I want to start with Kim, the chair of the Parks Committee, and ask her if she has any comments that she'd like to add.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, Mary Margaret, we all want to thank you so much for the work that your team has put into this park. Back in 2008, we heard lots of questions about why do we need a downtown park. And today, I can proudly say this is why. As our city has grown, the need has often been talked about that we need a great communal place that we can all enjoy as Oklahoma Cityans. And I think this is our amazing backyard. The thought that has come into incorporating those elements that are truly Oklahoma, making landscape that is truly Oklahoma, the ARCA theming that reflects the whole area, working side by side with all of the special interest groups that needed to be represented as park, and finally our prospective operator to make sure that, as your promise was from the very beginning, that the day we opened the park, we knew exactly what we were doing and how we were doing. And this embodies and fulfills this. This was presented at the Park Subcommittee yesterday. We did not have a quorum yesterday for some unfortunate reasons, but this reflects what we have been working on for the last 3 months very diligently with Hargraves. And those of us that were there yesterday, and those who also sent some emails, were very much in favor of moving this forward as quickly as possible to stay on our timeline and just in support of a phenomenal project. I can't say enough good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. We appreciate the great work you and your committee have done. Are there other questions for Mary Margaret? David?
Yeah, it relates to the timing. Just, again, I don't think we can mention it enough. But before I get into those questions, has all the property been acquired, David?
The majority of it, there's a couple of very small pieces that still we have agreement with ODOT, but for the most part, I can say yes.
For both upper and lower?
Not the lower, just the upper.
Okay. And again, David, the date that the boulevard is expected to be completed? I know that's outside of our hands, but...
I have that written on here is why I'm going to my phone, because I saved some information here. Complete construction in 2017.
Okay. And then on this chart where we show where we're at on page 54, it indicates that construction may begin in 15. Is that accurate?
That's if you consider ordering trees construction. So we're calling the advanced tree supply process happening this fall. I think the line for actual site prep is right at the beginning of 2016.
And there will be some construction as far as the utilities and
right.
removing the streets and Hudson Avenue and some of those things you'll see prior to actual park construction.
Well, for example, like the closing or the removal of the streets, will they occur before the end of this calendar year?
Probably not before the end of the year, but certainly next year.
Okay. And then the estimated completion looks to be in 2018, I guess towards the end of 18?
Yes, that will be the completion of construction. We would, of course, then recommend that you open the park in, say, April of 2019. I don't think it makes sense to open a park in December or January, but we will be wrapping up construction then.
Well, okay, final question then. If the construction, goes all the way through 18, when can people at least begin to access the park? I mean, will there
Until
be
that
parts of
construction
it?
fence is down.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I think what she's saying is right at the end of 18, it will technically be completed, but I don't know if you want to have a grand opening in December, but that's about the timing.
Councilman, if I might add something, what we're looking today is a very concise overview of the preliminary report. The preliminary report that you can find online on the records is actually 367 pages, if memory serves me. It's about 6.5 hours worth of read. And when you start looking through all of those pieces, you can understand how intricate the construction is and how much work that early on we had thought about, could we just use parts of the area of the park, but certainly I think the liability would be huge, and that this would be a huge cordoned off area, and we wouldn't want people inside of it during those times for fear of injury or any of those other reasons.
Thank you.
David, as I recall, the upper park was broken in 2 phases, with the first phase being the north edge of it, with the idea of it coinciding with the opening of the boulevard. And so now we're saying the boulevard's going to open in 2017, but we don't plan to have the park open maybe the 29th. So are we going to still try to get that north edge done and have something there other than a construction zone when the boulevard opens?
No, sir. The idea is to combine the Phase 1 and the Phase 2 for economies of scale with construction, and also it's just hard to predict some of that construction that's going on with the boulevard. We have tentative schedules now, but we don't plan on opening it in phases. It will all be done at
So it's
at
possible
once.
the boulevard would open a year or so in advance, and the park lining the boulevard would still be a construction zone.
It could, remembering that part of the design that you have to do is match up with that boulevard, and that's one of the challenges that Hargraves has had, is not knowing what the grades are and exactly where the street is, and that's something we've dealt with up until now, and that's also a reason for combining the two phases.
And you don't think there's still the importance of having the edge of the park open when the boulevard?
Well, I'd certainly like to, but the way we're looking at it, and we think that, as I mentioned, the economies of scale with the construction is doing the tree package early on here, and then we've got the utilities and the Hudson and some of that construction, but then what we need to do is grade the whole project, is do that grading. We don't want to be doing it in pieces. And then you have the issue with the buildings and the hardscape and the landscape and coordinating all that, and we just feel like it would be best to do that all at once with one contractor rather than having a contractor that's trying to build a building waiting on a dirt contractor who he doesn't control, and also trying to build phases of it and work around, I think, would be very complicated.
Michael, from my viewpoint, it's also, ODOT's been terrifically cooperative with us, but we've got two entities scheduling, and I think the only thing we can control is what we're doing, and ODOT will be moving along at their own pace, not necessarily, absolutely not controlled by us. So trying to coordinate those two probably was a great idea in the beginning, but practically it's really hard to do.
Well, based on,
guarantee that the park won't be finished before the boulevard
yeah,
either.
based on their history, they may push their schedule back a little.
Yes, I'm not saying that either, Dave. That's a good point. Who knows about federal funding or something? But
And
anyway,
we talked about that too, that if ODOT runs later on the project, then that could stop construction of the park if we don't look at that as an entire. And we have no idea at this point yet what could develop north of the park. Obviously, at one point in time, we thought it was going to be the convention center, but it may be something else. So there may be another project yet to mitigate, whatever that is. So we kind of felt like if we built it, maybe everybody would adhere to our schedule too.
Other questions for Mary Margaret? All right, then,
Thank you.
Amanda, I want you and Mark Beck and David Todd to pay attention very closely here to make sure we're doing this right. In the packet that was sent to you originally, there was a resolution that was recommended for approval to approve the preliminary report. And am I right, David, that we have now, there was a corrected resolution that was filed on Tuesday afternoon, and we all have a copy of it. And so what we believe we're doing is we will consider the corrected resolution. Are we all together on that? It's the corrected resolution that was filed Tuesday afternoon, and you have a copy in front of you. Did you want to make a motion, Kim?
I would, and I was just going to clarify that the correction was in combining those two first phases so that we are all on track for this. And yes, I would like to make a motion that we approve the resolution with the recommended.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution, the corrected resolution that you have in your packet. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is approved. Mary Margaret.
Thank you so much.
Go home with our thanks for
Thank
a great job, and we're glad to be moving this forward. And Kim, congratulations to you and your subcommittee. This is a red letter day for us all. Thank you. David, anything else about that?
No, sir.
All right, then let's go back to to your agenda. The next item is item number Roman numeral 3. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 3 is recommend resolution ratifying and approving change order number 1 and amendment number 2 for MAPS 3 Phase 1, Project 3, sidewalk improvements, increase of $10,424.84, accepting the project and placing the maintenance bond into effect, project M3-W001B. This is the final acceptance of the final project that's in Phase 1. So Phase 1 of the sidewalks will be complete. Remember, there's 4 phases. This is the final change order and amendment that we typically see when we wrap up a project, wrapping up the quantities that were overrun and underrun that is very common. This comes with the approval of the subcommittee. They did not have a quorum yesterday, but the members that were there did recommend that it moved on to this body.
That'd be great. Any comment, Zane? Yeah. Are there questions for David on item 3? Shall we approve it? Been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution before you in item 3. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The recommended resolution is adopted. Item 4, David.
Item 4 is recommend approval of draft final plans and specifications for MAPS 3 sidewalks Phase 3 Project 2 improvements, Project M3-W003A. This also comes out of the Trails and Sidewalks Subcommittee. Did not have a quorum yesterday, but recommended that it proceed. This is the second project out of Phase 3. And we have Russell Kent here today to give you a presentation on what all's included in these plans. I want to point out that they're listed as draft final plans because we still have to acquire right-of-way. So they'll be held until we acquire the right-of-way, and there may be a small change here or there due to the right-of-way issues, but there won't be any significant changes, and that's why it's listed as draft. So I'd like to turn it over to Russell Kent.
Welcome, Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, good morning. As David mentioned, this is Phase 3 of the MAPS 3 sidewalks, and it's Project 2. So it's a continuation of Phase 3. Project 1 was approved last month, and this is the second half of that. So Phase 3, of course, is a continuation of Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 being completed by Smith Roberts, Phase 2 by Cardinal Engineering. And as I mentioned, it's been split into 2, just as we did on the other 2 phases, primarily based on the length of the alignments, the cost, and also the geographic location of those alignments. So the total budget for Phase 3 is $3.45 million. That's been split in 2, so $1.725 million for both Project 1 and Project 2. As you're aware, the alignments are based on the recommendations made in the Sidewalks Master Plan, and each of those alignments we're giving a weighted, rated ranking, and that's what we're using to base these alignments on. So let's look at Project 2. Quick overview. There's a total of 6 alignments over 5 miles in length, 5.16 miles, and the estimated construction cost is $1.64 million, which is under budget. What I'm going to do is, this is a map of the alignments, primarily in the north part of Oklahoma City. Project 1 was primarily in the south portion. One of the reasons for splitting it geographically is we can minimize mobilization costs for the contractors. There's less distance to travel between the alignments and construction sites. I'm just going to look at each of them in turn and just briefly tell you about them and give you a quick overview. Alignment 41 is West Hefner Road. It's on the south side of the street. It's just under a mile, 0.88 miles in length, between Blackwelder Road and North Lee Avenue. There's 2 signalized intersection crossings. Total construction cost is estimated at $320,000. Look at a picture, and we'll look at 1 or 2 pictures of each of these alignments. This is showing a typical drainage ditch, which is obviously very common on most of the alignments. Something we found through the construction of the trails and other sidewalks is one of the issues when you build a sidewalk next to a ditch is the erosion of that area. So we've made sure that we're going to incorporate permanent erosion control, typically riprap or geotextile fabric at those areas to maintain the stability of the ditches. Alignment 44 is West Memorial Road on the south side of the street. That's 1 mile in length between May Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue. Incorporates 1 signalized intersection, and the construction cost there is $242,000. This picture here shows Highland Park Drive, one of the more challenging crossings on that alignment based on the length. It's not a heavy traffic area, but it's over 140 feet in length, so we're going to incorporate an additional midsection signalization area for the pedestrians to cross there to ensure they have adequate time. Alignment 48 is on Rockwell Avenue. It's, again, a mile in length between Hefner Road and Northwest 122nd. Includes 2 signalized intersection crossings. $269,000 is the construction cost. One of the things we're doing here is providing access across the street to Putnam City High School, and you can see the existing ramps in place, and we're going to ensure that the alignment here ties into those so they have access across to the school. Alignment 58 is one of 3 that we have on Pennsylvania Avenue. This one is between 50th and 63rd on the west side of the street. I would point out that the Sidewalks Master Plan actually for this alignment indicated that the sidewalk should be on the east side, and that's what we looked at in the preliminary report, but as we went through it, we found that due to various factors, primarily construction cost and other construction considerations, that would be better suited on the west side. There's extensive retaining wall required if we were on the east side near Penn Square Mall, and again at Waterford, the Waterford office complex. And in addition, there is another alignment south of here that's also on the west side of the street between 36th and 50th, so there's a lot of benefits to being on the west side in addition to saving money. So this alignment is 1 mile in length, includes 3 signalized intersection crossings with a construction cost of $330,000. Once again, it's between 50th and 63rd. This is an area across from Penn Square Mall, right across from the Cheesecake Factory, the commercial shopping strip. This is one of the more challenging areas on this alignment. The existing right-of-way is on the back of the curb, obviously closest to the parking lot, not the street curb, but the parking lot curb. So we're going to install the sidewalk, construct the sidewalk on that median there. The challenge here is the lights. They're going to need to be relocated to the back side, remove those bases. We have the adequate 4 foot of clearance for ADA compliance. And then the overhang of the vehicles, we'll need to add curb stops to ensure that they're not overhanging into the sidewalk. And then, of course, this is Northwest Expressway, a large road that we need to cross. And you can see this is looking north, so we're looking on the west side of the street. We're going to upgrade that crossing there for the signalized crossing infrastructure. I would point out that there are existing crossings in other directions of Northwest Expressway, so we're going to have access and create a pedestrian route into Penn Square Mall at that location. Moving on, this is alignment 60. Again, it's on Pennsylvania Avenue, further north this time. This is the shortest alignment in the project. It's only 1/4 mile in length. It's between West Memorial Road and 140th Street. Construction cost estimate is $100,000. This picture is not so much a challenge. It's something to point out that this area has seen a lot of growth, commercial growth, a lot of fast food restaurants built in the last few months, and based on city requirements, they're required to build a sidewalk. So since the survey was completed, since the design was completed, there's been 2 or 3 sections of sidewalk constructed here, so we're having to make sure that we know where that is and how long those sidewalks are so we can tie into them correctly for this alignment. Finally, alignment 61, again on Pennsylvania Avenue. This is the one I mentioned, again on the west side of the street, south of Penn Square Mall. So this is a mile or just over a mile because of the bend in the road between 36th and 50th Street. Includes 3 signalized intersection crossings with an estimated cost of $374,000. This is showing the I-44 underpass where 2 of those signalized intersections are required, one on the north, one on the south, and not so much a challenge, but obviously this is an area where we have to ensure there's the proper timing for the lights so the pedestrians can safely go across the street and under the bridge. And that's the 6 alignments. So moving forward with schedule, Right now, we're acquiring the right-of-way needed to construct these, and that's why it's draft. And once that's complete, we'll then go in front of City Council for approval, and then we'll be able to advertise the bid, open the bid for contract, and finally award a construction contract. This is just a very quick summary of what we talked about, the 6 alignments, 5.16 miles in length, and the estimated construction cost coming under budget, $1.64 million. And with that, I thank you for your time. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
For Phase 3, Project 2, on the sidewalks. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It is adopted. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
That moves us to item 5, and I want to, before David explains it, I want to mention a process that we're going to use for the next 3 items with your acquiescence. Items 5, 6, and 7 all relate to the Lake Draper Trail project. It is Project 1, Project 2, and Project 3. This was considered yesterday by the Trails and Sidewalks Subcommittee. They did not have a quorum. Russell Pace, who was here with us, was there, Scott Buxton, Georgie Rasco, and Hal McKnight. All wonderfully good, faithful members of our Trails Committee. Because we didn't have a quorum, there was not a unanimous agreement about whether to go forward with this, and the process that we agreed on before we left that subcommittee was that Russell Pace would be here with us today, and he is here, and he's asked to be heard, and I've agreed for him to be heard. The other 3 are not here. They all were in favor of moving this forward, asking that this be approved. It's part of the Trails Master Plan, but Russell wanted the opportunity to share his views with the Citizens Advisory Board. So I think Russell's comments apply to all 3 of the items, 5, 6, and 7, so we're going to do it first on item 5. And with that background, David, why don't you tell us what this is about, and Russell, prepare yourself to come forward. You'll be given the first chance.
Okay, item 5 is recommend resolution receiving consultant review committee report and authorizing negotiation of an engineering services contract with Cadmus Engineering LLC for MAPS 3 trail improvements, Phase 3, Project 1, Lake Draper Trail, Project M3-T003. As Mr. McDaniel said, this is for the Draper Trail. It is approximately 10 miles in length, and we've split it into 3 projects. We've gone through the typical process of interviewing consultants for this, and that's what you have on 5, 6, and 7, or the authorization to negotiate with the 3 engineers for that project.
Thank you. Russell, welcome.
I'm Russell Pace. I live at 3101 Eaton Avenue in Oklahoma City. It's been my pleasure to serve on the Trails and Sidewalks Committee the last 4 years. We've done some amazing things, and we're going to do some amazing trails in the future. My request today is to give some additional time to study options within the community for trails, not necessarily just the Trail of Draper. Russell Kent referred to our weighted and rated averages that we use to determine where the sidewalks were going to go. No such analysis has been done with the trail or the Trail of Draper. And I would simply ask that the subcommittee be given your direction to spend another 90 days or so considering the options that exist within Oklahoma City. Excuse me. There are numerous opportunities, I think, for additional trail that will go along the Deep Fork, the Brock, the Twin Creek, the Lightning Creek, and perhaps the Chisholm creeks in South Oklahoma City. I think there exists opportunity along I-35 and I-44 to have trails that will connect to the community rather than being a purely recreational trail at Lake Draper. I think I've spent the last 40 years at Lake Draper, first as a dirt biker and now as a member of the Cross Timbers Riders Association that manages the riding area. There's not a lot of, excuse me, there's not a lot of use out at Draper right now. It's still kind of in far southeast Oklahoma City. The road there provides a great opportunity for bicycling presently. I kind of feel that that would be redundant to build an additional trail. But those are my personal viewpoints. One of the things that we're most concerned about is whether or not the GO 2007 bond issue will build the spoke from Western over to Grand Boulevard, where it now ends at 61st Street. If not, the consensus of the Trail Committee was to finish that first, as opposed to doing Draper. That's a question that we don't have a good feel for. Will the GO bond actually do that? So I simply ask for additional time to consider. I appreciate your time this morning. Questions?
Thank you, Russell. You might stay at the podium. Zane, did you want turn on your mic?
Thank you, John. I appreciate your comments and concern. However, I'd like to point out that, the Draper Trail was included in our initial plan for MAPS 3. And we have a lot of people that live in that quadrant of the city who feel like they're disassociated from the whole MAPS 3 program. And we feel that this is an attempt also to draw them in, to get them excited about it. And I know for a fact that a number of the cyclists in that area are excited about the development of the trail. I know, too, that Boeing has been talking about this trail development in that area as an incentive to help draw some of their new young engineers that they're hiring for the 600 to 800 some odd engineering positions out there. And there are a number of Tinker employees that use the current road system out there. I know that for a fact that we've had 2 fatalities on the roads out there because of the conditions and the high speeds and stuff. I also personally know of a chief engineer that works at Tinker that was severely injured riding on the road out there due to an accident because of the conditions of the road. And everyone I have stopped on the road, flagged down, or talked to at Tinker or at Boeing are very excited about this trail moving forward. And I think it's critical that the Draper Trail be continued in this process. And I understand that I would love to see the whole connection also, but I think that this is a real opportunity to bring the southeast quadrant of the city into the fold of MAPS 3. So I would recommend that we go forward. I understand what you're saying, but I would not want to hold this up another 90 days for us to go back and eventually come to the same conclusion that we want to proceed with this. And I think that Russell, comments were made at the committee, but there are 3 other members that were at the committee that felt like we needed to go ahead and proceed with this also. So, Russell, you want to counter that?
No, I agree 100% with what you're saying. I simply think that we have a lot more opportunity in Oklahoma City to find better trails. We have an opportunity to involve the cyclists, do a true survey of the users out there. As a cyclist, a lot of times we don't use the trail. We prefer to stay on the road simply because it's faster. So, no, I think it's potentially maybe the place to build the trail. I just asked for some time to consider the other options.
Russell, we appreciate you being here, and this is an important part of the process.
You want to go first, Councilman?
Well, just a comment or 2, possibly. One, I think the issue of connectivity versus recreation should be developed a little bit more and explored, and I would like to see more information related to that issue. If my understanding, and I have to apologize for not completely understanding this project, but if the focus on this particular part is more recreational, and yet, if I heard you or understood you correctly, Russell, there's an opportunity to shift a little bit from solely recreational to more of a connectivity type of trail. I'm supportive of that just as a person who has limited experience in bicycling, and especially in South Oklahoma City, we have very few ways of getting around other than on the streets, and I still hold the view that that's a dangerous way for bicyclists to get around. So anything that we can do to improve connectivity, I would be supportive of in theory, in concept. Again, I don't know the details. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just throwing out that perspective that we've done a poor job, I think, not on this particular project, but the city as a whole in providing opportunities, especially for bicycling, to allow people from the various coordinates of the city to, say, come down to the central part or the core of downtown. There is no direct way, say, from Early Wine Park in far southwest Oklahoma City to reach downtown in a safe environment. I think that's more important than just a solely recreational trail. So I just wanted to throw that perspective out there as your committee continues to look into that. Thank you.
Nathaniel?
If I could add a comment to that, I live out in that quadrant of the city, and every day when I go home, not so much when I come to work, because I come to work long before the sun comes up, but every road out there has got riders on it every day, and we're seeing them come all the way up from Norman on our streets, Anderson Road, Hiwassee, Westminster, and it's not, I think, just a recreational trail, but a trail where they can come up to connect, go around, and turn back. But I really think it's critical that we provide some avenue or some participation for people who live there. I don't ride right now because it's not safe to ride on those streets. I don't have the guts enough to do it. I would rather have put my bike on my truck and drive over to Draper Trail instead of having to come all the way up 30 minutes to Hefner or someplace like that. And I think we're denying the whole southeast quadrant of the city an opportunity to gain exercise through the same methods that we're seeing being enjoyed in the northwest and the southwest quadrants of the city.
So I had a couple of questions I wanted to make sure I understood. So the 2007 GO bond issue, is that something that will have clarity in the coming weeks, or is that something that's further out?
I can tell you that within that bond issue, there are trail projects, and one of them is the Deep Fork Greenway, and Public Works is getting ready to start the consultant selection on that, so that is moving. That will be starting.
So by delaying, some number of weeks, you're guaranteeing yourself that you'll have clarity on that issue, or is it maybe it'll stretch out longer before you really know the answer to that question?
Well, I'm not sure what the question is, other than the Deep Fork Trail that Mr. Pace talks about is in the bond issue. It will be built, and they are starting that process.
Okay. I see. The other question was, you mentioned something about a weighted average type ranking approach that was used. Are you saying it wasn't used on this part of the trail system, or it was?
It was not. It was not. We had a matrix with 6 or 7 parameters, and we ranked those and then took them, came up with a number. So the number kind of dictated where we built the sidewalks.
Okay, so, but that system, so the system or the methodology that we're using for this trail, does it look like the methodology for the Lake Hefner Trail, though? It wasn't similar to the other sidewalks, but is it similar to the methodology of the Lake Hefner Trail?
The other 2 maps project, I would say that it is. We didn't really study. We kind of knew from the history that's where we wanted to build. So there was no weighted ranking comparing the different ones. Well, there was initial discussion as to which ones to build first.
Excuse me, Russell. There was a discussion about whether, which one came first and which one came second and third. But the Draper Trail was promised or was part of the original MAPS project when it was voted on.
And that came from the trails study that comes out of planning. So that's where that was determined. The subcommittee did not determine the trails themselves. They were taken from the study for trails. And as Mr. Boatwright said, keep in mind that is what was promised promised I say in quotation marks, but that's what has been shown on the documents for the MAPS 3 vote and as we've gone along. And I give probably 2 presentations a month, and I know Mr. McDaniel gives 1 or 2 a month, and that's always included in there. And we've always articulated to the people that these are the projects that are going to be done and how they came about.
Okay. And so I guess my last comment is I would echo what Councilman said as far as connectivity, because I think that is really important, that it serves both recreational and commuter users. I mean, I myself, I'll never bike in a circle. I'm only going to bike, as a commuter. I'm more of a downtowner, so I don't have some of the same considerations that you might, but I want to make sure, I don't want to introduce myself or kind of redone what you guys have already done, but I do want to just kind of echo and say that connectivity I think should be a great priority, and I'll leave it to your collective judgment as a subcommittee to feel like you've satisfied that design criteria.
Dr. Tom, if I might comment, I think these are the discussions that begin some of the challenges that we have with any project with MAPS 3. And I know for me, Gary Mars said something early on that always kind of takes me back to square one and makes me feel like I get in perspective. And he said that, when all of these projects were designed, they were designed with the knowledge that we had at that time. And as time goes on, our knowledge changes. And we have to be mindful that we can make better decisions today than we did yesterday with the knowledge that we have. But don't forget that the reason that there is a MAPS 3 advisory board and there are subcommittees is to ensure that the promises that were made to the citizens are carried forward. And if this promise of this trail was made to the citizens through this MAPS Trails program, we should honor it in the best way we can. That's what we do. We review and recommend. Now, when we get new knowledge and we learn things, we also need to review and make our recommendations on that, I think. And just in the same way that we asked council to possibly consider looking at some of its discretionary money to be spent on sidewalks, possibly this is a point where we should say, is there any discretionary money that could be looked at for trails and sidewalks to augment some of the things that the MAPS 3 can't accomplish under what it was voted for the trails that are so important. And obviously in our times, people are getting more active. We are getting out. Everybody wants sidewalks. And we certainly can't change all of that overnight, but if we all begin to listen and think of creative ways to make those strategies happen, they will. So I understand the reason to want to slow down and look, but if we're slowing down to look at something that might make us overlook a promise that we've made, I think we have to come to the point and make that hard decision that we do need to make forward and move forward on that progress and that promise.
Michael?
David, could you give us a little background on, the trail master plan, when it was developed, how it was developed, how much of it we've covered, what's left to be done?
I can't speak to that because I wasn't involved in that. It was done before me. I would assume it was done with the Trails Advisory Committee that exists. And
not the MAPS trails.
Not the MAPS, no.
Russell, you may know something about that, might you?
My recollection is that we were sitting around having a beer, and we decided that it'd be a good thing to put a trail around Draper. And that's kind of maintained momentum for the last 30 years. That's my memory of it.
But this came out of a master plan, you said the planning department did. Was that a community involvement situation? Was that done in a vacuum? How was that done?
I can't answer that.
Michael, I might add, I was at the meeting, or the subcommittee meeting yesterday, and I definitely wasn't involved in the planning. I think if Scott Buxton and Georgie Rasco and Hal McKnight were here, what I heard them say yesterday, and correct me if I'm wrong, Russell, was that they were involved in the development of the Trails Master Plan they thought it was good, and the reason they wanted to move forward with it was because it had been studied, and they thought we should go forward with it because it was a part of that master plan that had been adopted, and the reason that Zane has already outlined that I won't try to repeat about doing something in the MAPS 3 projects for that particular area of the city. Is that kind of what you thought they said?
Absolutely. I appreciate David's clarity on the last spoke of the Deep Fork Greenway. To our way of thinking, that was a great opportunity, but that's going to be funded through the GO bond issue. So that takes away that consideration. We all know that nothing was promised in writing in maps, that the language that authorized maps is very nonspecific. It allows us to move locations of convention centers, parks, and various things. So we're not tied to this. I think if we produce the number of miles of trails that we've promised the citizens of Oklahoma, they'll be very happy. So with that,
Russell, I've got one last question
Yes,
for
sir.
you, just to make sure that we understand, because we're going to act or not act on this right now. I'm understanding you to say, not that you want to change the projects or the way they're building the trails. What you don't want to do is spend the money that is allocated to the Draper Trail. You'd rather spend it on a trail somewhere else, not change the way we're doing this.
if that's what the analysis proves to be true, if it's the Draper Trail, let's build it. But if it's Brock Creek, if it's providing a link from OCCC all the way down to the River Trail,
Sure.
that may be a better trail.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One final comment, and I should know better than to say things like this, but I don't want to have the city shift responsibility for properly maintaining roads out in southeast Oklahoma City and around Draper back to any MAPS committee, and I'm afraid those streets, because we hear about them all the time, have just been left in disrepair. So the city of Oklahoma City needs to assume a greater responsibility in maintaining those to provide a safer way for bicyclists to get around, and this would supplement it. Again, I'm not suggesting we agree or disagree on any particular trail, but if they need an additional 90 days, I would say I would be in favor of allowing them additional time to study this.
Celia?
What would be the consequences of delaying this for 90 days?
I'm sorry?
What would be the consequences? Like, what's the downside of delaying this for 90 days until?
Well, it would just be a delay in the project for 90 days right now.
Are we also authorizing a study?
No.
That's what you're really asking.
That's what.
Absolutely. Just delay.
Just really asking for a study.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess if there was an amendment to it, it'd be an amendment to conduct a study. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well,
We are working off of an existing trails master plan that was developed, and that's really all I can say.
I mean, I guess that's what you're asking for, right?
Right, absolutely. I mean, we need to direct city staff to develop options and look at the buildability of it, all the complexity that goes with building a trail.
And so a study like that's not going to be a 90-day delay. I mean, if that's truly what we decide to do, we're probably looking at much longer time than that.
well knowing, I just add to this, so far as I know, Russell's the only one on the subcommittee that's suggesting.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to clarify what he's asking.
I don't think that you could do a study in 90 days.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It'd be a much longer delay than that.
Yes.
What would be the time frame?
I don't know. If there was a consultant selection and a lengthy study, I think it could take a year.
Yeah. Your 90 days to select a consultant, probably.
And I would advocate that a year may not be the wrong criteria. We're doing a master plan with Dennis Blind on pedestrians and sidewalks, so that might dovetail in it very well. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Russell, for being here. All right, we have item 5, a recommended resolution. Zane, you have a motion you want to make?
I would make a motion that we move forward with the resolution. We can get this moving.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
I believe the ayes have it. Do you agree?
Sounds like it.
The ayes have it. All right. That resolution is adopted. That moves us to item 6 on the agenda.
Item 6, as we said, is a continuation of this project. It's recommended resolution receiving consultant review committee report and authorizing negotiation of an engineering services contract with CEC Corporation Incorporated for MAPS 3 trail improvements, Phase 3, Project 2, Lake Draper Trail, Project M3-T003A.
Any questions?
I think the same argument that we've just concluded would cover this and the next one, so I would make a motion that we proceed with this resolution also.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve this. Is there further discussion on item 6? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 7, David.
Item 7 is recommend resolution receiving consultant review committee report and authorizing negotiation of an engineering services contract with Triad Design Group Incorporated for MAPS 3 trail improvements, Phase 3, Project 3, Lake Draper Trail, Project M3-T003B.
Again, I move that we accept the resolution.
And I will again.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the resolution described in item number 7 on your agenda. Is there further discussion?
I would have one point I would like to make.
Sure.
I think it would be great at the next Trails and Sidewalks Subcommittee meeting that maybe an item on the agenda could be talking about, is it prudent to, at this point, take the new knowledge that we have and consider putting a consultant in place to create a true updated trails plan, just the same way that we created a sidewalks master plan, so that the larger scale issues past this promise can be looked forward and studied.
I certainly agree that we'll take that to the committee, and I wholeheartedly support that. And I want to say to Russell too, even though we've passed these resolutions, I believe that we'll have more discussion at the subcommittees in detail about this. And I hope that with moving forward with these contracts, that the contractors will look at the trails that we've completed so far and see how good they are, and that the Draper Trail comes out to be as good as the rest of them.
So, thank you. Further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Chair believes the ayes have it. Do you agree?
I do. Thank you.
All right. The motion is adopted. Item 8, David.
Sir, before we go on to that, Russell, I want to thank you very much for coming and talking to us.
Thank you, Russell.
Item 8 is recommend resolution approving change order number 9 and amendment number 5 for MAPS 3 Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Phase 2 New Expo Building, increase of $53,619.86, project M3-F002. If you choose to approve this item, you have a revised memo with you that was handed out by staff, and the revision is the third paragraph in the background where it talks about the liability insurance and their $100,000 deductible, and it's really just for information so that everyone knows what their deductible is. With that, I go over the actual item. The item was heard by the Fairgrounds Subcommittee and was approved unanimously on Tuesday. Item 1 is an electrical panel relocation. There was an electrical panel serving one of the buildings that was mounted on a pole, and the pole was to be removed, so the electrical panel had to be relocated into the building. Electrical generator modifications, when they began the construction of that, some code issues were discovered by the inspector, and they required some changes. The security system modification, item 3, is a credit of $29,528.73. And this is based on some changes that they were able to do for some junction boxes and points of demarcation on the security system. The asphalt replacement, there's $10,113 there. Our project abutted another project that was done, and there was a 5-foot strip of paving that was left in there, and it made sense to go ahead and replace that so that we didn't have brand new paving on each side of a 5-foot strip of old paving. Item 5 is a continuation of the soil issues we've had out there. The plumbing trenches that were put in there required the flowable fill to support those, so that $18,000 is in there. And then we also have an amendment, amendment number 5, and this is one of the items that the prices were already established, so this is not something that was negotiated. The prices were established, and there were additional pier depths for the foundations of $46,434. So that brings the total for the change order and amendment to the $53,619. I can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Shall we approve it?
Let me clarify. I got ahead of myself. The revised memo is for item 9, which is also with the fairgrounds, but there is no revised amendment on this one.
Okay, so item 8, the resolution is in your packet, and you've had a chance to review it. What should we do? D has moved that we approve it. Is there a second? It's been seconded by Zane. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is adopted. That takes us to item 9.
Okay, item 9.
You were very anxious to talk about this. Now's your chance.
I was, thank you. Item 9 is recommend resolution approving amendment number 1 to contract for architectural services with Frankfurt Short Brugia Associates PC for the MAPS 3 Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Phase 2 New Expo Building, increase of $288,400, project M3-F002. There's 2 items in this amendment on that contract, and one of them is design and preparation and bidding for kitchen equipment that will be put into the expo building. And then also there is an addition for greater inspection, or site observation as we call it. The contract included the typical construction administration, which is periodic construction administration. We have a lot of people out there watching this project and doing the construction observation, but we've come to realize the sheer size of this job. Periodic inspection is not enough. Remember that this job, just the building itself, is 5 acres. And then the whole site is quite substantial. So we feel like the project will be better served by having a member of FSB's team out there full-time. They'll be out there 40 hours a week. So that's what this amendment is for.
Will that be Alan, or will he just have to come to council meetings?
It will not be Alan.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, go ahead. Dee, you had a question?
No, I just wanted to say that the committee did, investigate this and wondered why we needed to do that, and was this all going for salary? And we were assured on that, and the fact that it is moving along so rapidly, and there's so much happening, and it's going to be finished next year, that we definitely agree that this should be done. So someone's on the spot, answer questions, get things done right away.
Thank you.
Okay, so it was the committee's recommendation.
Other questions? Michael?
David, you said this also includes, bidding in the food service equipment, so we're running that through the construction contract now?
No, it'll be a separate bid. It'll be typical or similar to construction, but it won't be through the same contractor, and that's why we're doing it this way. So they will prepare a separate set of plans.
And the architects are designing or drawing up the specifications for the kitchen equipment.
Right, in conjunction with the
So
fairgrounds.
that's part of this equipment, is to get those specifications.
Right, and it will be bid out separately.
Okay. I'll second the motion.
All right. Are there further questions? Well, I'll just add that on all of our projects, the timing is important. But at the State Fairgrounds, the timing is really important. I think they're shooting for a target date of June 2016 to have this building finished, and the fair is in September. And so the timing of, making sure the timing works and doing these kinds of things to make sure the project is expedited and timely is, I think, something we all fully appreciate. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is adopted. That takes us to item 10, David.
Item 10 is recommend resolution approving change order number 1 for MAPS 3 Downtown Public Park Demolition Package 5, increase of $1,480, and accepting the project M3-P012. This is the demo package 5. It is the former Salvation Army building. It is complete, so this is accepting that project, and it's also authorizing change order 1. When they were doing the demolition, they found a substantial grease pit down there that was buried and wasn't foreseen on the plans, so we had that as a change order.
The subcommittee agrees that we don't have a use for that in the park, and we'd like to have it removed.
So you move the adoption of this resolution?
Yes, sir, wholeheartedly.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt this resolution. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is adopted. You will note that we've already done item 11. That brings us to item 12, new business. Any new business, David?
No, sir.
I want to mention to you, well, then that brings us to item, boy, that seems pretty unlucky, but item 13, lucky 13. Okay. Any subcommittee reports?
I'll just give a quick update on the streetcar. David will address a couple informational items that I'll let him touch on. But yesterday we got an update on route design, including the stops, maintenance facility, Santa Fe station, Intercon contract, and also the wireless versus wired ratio that we're looking at, and it's a function of the battery, what it can really do in practice as opposed to the model. So no action items from the streetcar subcommittee, but a lot of work being done. It's just the unsexy, engineering work that's going on. And luckily, haven't seen any surprises, haven't seen anything that's thrown up a red flag in terms of staying on time or on budget.
I would just add to that, the presentation was that they were approaching the 60% design review of the transit system. So.
Any other? Well, I might just mention that the Convention Center Subcommittee did not meet this month. As you know, Kathy O'Connor and her team are negotiating with the various landowners of the two sites upon which the focus now rests, and we're expecting that within the next 30 to 60 days they'll be bringing us some proposals to consider, but nothing to report this month. All right. Any other subcommittee?
I was just going to remind those folks that are really interested in looking at the full preliminary report for the park. If you go to okc.gov, look under records, and then scroll down till you hit Maps 3 and Parks. It'll bring up the agenda for today's meeting, and right before those words to the left is View. It'll bring up all the attachments from the meeting, 4 large PDFs to download, but it really is amazing. Even if you just look at the pictures, don't read any of the schematics and flip through, but it gives you a really great bird's eye view of where we're going to spend our days in 2019.
Thank you, Kim. That brings us to item 14, informational items. David?
I have 2 informational items, and they deal with the streetcar, and they're in here just to let you know what's going on with this. This is the request for bids documents that will be sent out, and they don't typically come through the subcommittee and advisory board or even council for a vote. They go out and they come back to you once the bidders have been determined and a contract is awarded. So these 2 informational items are for the track work that we're going to need for the streetcar, and it's in 2 pieces. It's basically the straight track and then the switches and intricate curves and things. So there's 2 pieces. Those are going out in the next couple of weeks, and we're really happy to see that going out.
Thank you. Any questions for David about that?
I just had one question. do they go out as two separate packets because it's two different types of companies that do that work?
I don't know, Doug, can you answer? Doug Smith is here with the Jacobs Group, and they could probably give you a much more articulate answer. I would say it probably is yes, but I don't know.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members.
Morning, Doug.
We actually have Tim Martin here from Portland in the design group for the main line. He helped assemble the two packages for the girder rail and the special track work. So let me have him give you a little information about why they're separate packages and kind of how that fits together. Tim?
Thanks for coming all the way here to answer my question. We're getting some other work done, too. Lots of work to do. So there are two separate suppliers that we're looking at. One is the rail mill that's rolling all the steel rail and producing that. So we want to keep that separate from the track work. The intricate pieces will actually go to a fabricator. There's various fabricators. So if there's issues with one of those contracts, we don't tie those up.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Sure.
Thank you, Doug. That brings us to item 15. I want to say before David starts that you may recall that at last month's meeting, I asked if we might consider where we are from the implementation plan standpoint, our timeline, how our performance was stacking up versus the plan that the council approved, and David and Mike Mize are prepared to give us that report today. I've asked them to postpone that till next month. This meeting has gone just a little longer than most of you have planned for, and if you have a specific question about it, certainly you could ask David or Mike in the interim if it relating to any subcommittee, but particularly yours. But they will be prepared to spend more time on that at the September Citizens Advisory Board. And with that, David, I'll ask you for your report. We're not going to do that today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the river, the whitewater facility is under construction. If you've driven by there as you go east to south is really the best view. You can see that they're making great progress. The main building is really taking shape. The channels are certainly taking shape. The raft building, which is the building that's kind of in the middle of the project, is the structural steel is up, the slab is poured, the roof is going on. There's a lot going on with that. And then probably the most obvious change in the last couple of weeks is the kayak building, which is out at the very furthest east point, and it has a big point on it. It's going to be a very prominent feature. So the whitewater facility is going well and is well under construction. Senior Wellness Center 1, design's complete, if you recall, and construction has begun on that project. We have a groundbreaking on that, and I can't recall the date. Mark, do you recall?
Wednesday, September the 2nd, 10
September
o'clock.
2nd, okay. That's the groundbreaking. And then Wellness Center 2 continues design and should be coming to this group in the next couple of months as final plans. Pardon me. A lot of work going on still with trails and sidewalks, as we've had a lot of discussion today, but Phase 1 trails, Project 1 and 2 are they are complete. That's the West River Trail, with a few punch list items still going on that, but for in all practical purposes, that project is finished. Phase 2 trails, I-44 corridor is in design, and we're out acquiring right-of-way right now. And then we talked about the Phase 3 trail on the Lake Draper and the consultant selection that's ongoing with that. Phase 1 sidewalk project 3 is what you approved today as complete. And then we have Phase 2 project 1 and 2 sidewalks are under construction. Phase 3 project 1 is in construction, and then you approved the Phase 3 project 2 plans today for construction. Then also Convention Center, the site acquisition continues on that project. Expo building at the fairgrounds is under construction and making good headway on that, as we discussed a little bit. And we saw the preliminary report on the park today. The utility relocation should begin soon, and that will make a huge difference down there. And then we talked about the streetcar. Preliminary design is complete. The design continues on that, and now we have the RFPs for the rail to go out. So lots of things going on.
That's great. Thank you, David. Any comments by any member of the board? I'm going to mention two things. One, Mike Dover asked me to say to each of you, you're invited to be there. Mike, CEO, and their committee have worked long and hard on the senior wellness thing, and they, you'll recall, started with kind of a blank sheet of paper. And this is a really significant time for them, so if your schedule permits, love for you to join us on September 2, that's next Wednesday, I believe, at 10 o'clock. It's at 112th and Rockwell. So if you can be there, that would just be great. And congratulations to Mike and Celia and their subcommittee. It's been a long haul, and breaking ground is a good thing. Final thing for me is, when David mentioned the Whitewater project, I guess the contractor had a drone that did a video that David Monterey was the voice for. And it was really, really well done. I congratulate you, David, and the contractor. I've had a chance to show that video at a good number of public meetings, and the reception has been really spectacular to that from all quarters. And it's available.
It's on the website if you haven't seen it.
If you haven't seen it, it's worth reviewing and maybe even preserving. So when we get it completed, we'll see what all is going on.
Michael, the website.
If you go to okc.gov and you go to the Maps 3 section, you can find it there. You can also find it on YouTube. You just go out there and search for, and you have to put a lot of words in there, Oklahoma City Whitewater Rapids. If you just put Whitewater, you get the park out there. But if you put Whitewater Rapids in there, you'll find it.
You can also find it on the Maps 3 Facebook page as well.
Wow. So things are hopping. It's all good. Anyone from staff have anything else? Do we have any citizens here that want to comment? Shall we adjourn? Been moved and seconded and unanimously adopted. We're adjourned.